Before maybe we start, could I check how much interaction is good? Are people able to interact, or should I
Yeah.
just continue?
No, they just feel free to invite them for contribution through text messages, or I mean, in the chat, or they are willing to unmute and take part in the sessions. They are going to be really supportive.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a great honor to be here because if you've been part of the conversation just now with your professor, we've heard some amazing things about your resilience, about what you're going through, and it's just really an honor to be part of this experience and hopefully share something that is useful to you. My name is Manuel, and I am an academic skills advisor at La Trobe University Library. So I work in the library, and our role is to support our students here to be able to engage with the work that they do. Irrespective of their discipline, we share academic skills related to writing, related to presenting and giving assessments, and understanding the work that is required at university. And so hopefully this, not entirely exciting topic, but hopefully this topic can give you some skills or share some knowledge that is helpful to you further on. So we're looking at catching common writing errors today. Before we begin though, I'd also like to just mention that I'm very happy for you to interact with what I'm talking about by way of asking questions or even putting comments into the chat. And I'm very happy for you to unmute your mic. I'm not entirely sure how many people there are, maybe 12. So this is a great number. Usually for me, I say if the student numbers are under 20, I'm happy to get this kind of real-time verbal and chat kind of interaction, because I think that really enriches the conversation, it enriches the entire experience. So if you are one of those people, and even if you aren't, feel free to participate and join in at the conversation. And at the end, there is a very brief kind of interactive question and answer kind of thing as well. Also, if you have questions later on, feel free to ask them at the end. There's definitely going to be time, but throughout the presentation, whenever there is a question that you have, please unmute your mic. I'm happy to answer it then and there. Today, we're looking at these common writing errors. And the reason why this is a topic in the first place is because when you can catch common writing errors and improve your writing, no matter what it is, at university or even in the professional world, your message is going to be delivered with greater clarity and accuracy. And this, of course, builds your credibility as a writer and in whatever role you are trying to present. So, to begin with, we have the agenda. So we're looking at basic elements of proofreading, strategies that you can use for proofreading. Now, these aren't very complex. They're sometimes quite practical. We'll look at common errors and how to fix them. There will be a brief practice session, and I'll share an additional resource with you that we have here. Also, because I have a relatively soft voice, if at any time you can't hear me, or if I'm mumbling or speaking too fast, let me know. I'm happy to repeat something or clarify it again. Okay, so first of all, what is proofreading? Well, you might have heard of a lot of different words that are quite related to this, including editing, revision, and even checking work and proofreading. All of these are related, but what sets proofreading apart is that in proofreading, you're specifically looking for things such as issues or errors in grammar, spelling, punctuation, word choice, or formatting. Proofreading is also a very important part of the writing process. If I can borrow that term, writing process, and expand on it a bit, the writing process is something that you follow when you write academically, because you don't just have an idea and write it down and then submit it. There is a bit more elaborate process. There are more things you need to think about. And the reason why it's essential is because it addresses the clarity of your writing, the precision of your writing, how credible or how much people can believe you in your writing, and the assessment criteria. Helps you address that, because at university, oftentimes you will be marked against the assessment criteria. That means there's a very clear kind of rubric, or there are clear points that your lecturer is looking for in your writing, And if you improve your proofreading, it can really help you address that criteria better because your message is clearer and your lecturer or whoever is marking your work can understand it better. Another very important point to remember that sometimes becomes lost is that people don't give time to proofread. That means because they're busy with other assessments, because they're busy with researching and writing and you know, doing all of these things for university, they might not think proofreading is that relevant. And true, there are lots of competing priorities and many things that you need to do. But proofreading is important because it helps you really clarify that message. And it's a chance for you to incorporate all of the things that you've previously learned and done, and then improve your writing based on those things. So it's kind of like you're connecting the past and your experiences and the things that you've learned in the past with your current body of work that you'll be submitting and then getting a mark for. So it's really, really valuable to proofread. And so make time in your calendar to proofread. Sometimes that's as simple as that, that can really make that difference. Now, earlier, I just mentioned about the writing process. What is included in that process is brainstorming, planning and organizing, writing and drafting, revising and editing, and then publishing and submitting. Proofreading, what we're talking about today, kind of fits in here in the revise and edit, if you can see my mouse. Brainstorming, just briefly, is when you think of ideas. If you're writing something like an essay, brainstorming can mean reading the question, analyzing it, and then thinking about how you will address it. What main ideas will you use to answer it? And what main subpoints will you use to support that? The next part of the process, planning and organizing, is where you write a few more ideas and plan how you will address that on paper. So that's like a blueprint. You're writing a brief plan and you're saying, I'll use this idea to answer my first point. I'll use the next idea to answer my next point, and so on. So that you have a relatively clear idea of what you can write about and how that will be structured. And of course, at university, because you're using external sources, what articles or publications or documents you will use to support your ideas in the plan. Then, of course, there's that research process that is included, and then the writing and drafting comes next. Writing and drafting is when you look at your plan and then you start writing. And of course, if you are an experienced, a more seasoned kind of writer, you'll know that the brainstorming and the planning and the organizing and the researching is maybe up to 60 to 65% of the time you spend writing an assessment. The writing part will hopefully be smoother. I'm not necessarily saying easier because writing can be quite challenging, but writing is oftentimes a lot smoother and you'll help yourself writing if you have a solid plan. Then, of course, you have the revising and editing stage, which is very critical and very helpful because you are, as we said, building on the work that you've done in the past. You're building on the experiences and the feedback that you've received from lecturers or from your teachers, and you're incorporating that and applying those lessons in your current writing that you will submit. And so in a way, you're kind of getting help for work that you're submitting because you're applying the feedback from the past. And finally, of course, there's publishing and submitting. So once you've done the editing and revising and proofreading, after that, you are more confident to submit and publish because you know that you've done your checks and the due diligence. So let's look at some strategies for proofreading. Now, also, if anyone has any great strategies that they want to share as well, I'm really happy to kind of open the floor for that because sometimes students surprise us, teachers and also academic skills advisors with some really novel or really helpful and effective ways that they themselves proofread. There's lots of strategies out there. You don't have to use all of them, and they might not all work really well for you. But if you know about some of these, then you can try them out and you can see which ones work and which ones don't work and use the ones that are most effective for you. Here are some. Starting with fresh eyes, reading out loud, reading from the end to the beginning, using previous feedback and list frequent errors, and of course, using editing tools that are available. We'll start with fresh eyes. Sometimes this is just a good reminder because when you are in the midst of writing an assessment, you're probably, doing a lot of work. You're probably researching, you've edited, you've written, you have gone back and forth in organizing your notes. And that means you are probably, also a bit tired. So where possible, try to get enough rest and really approach the editing as a single and individual task. And that just means you're giving yourself the best kind of energy and chance to find the errors. So that's more of a practical tip. Start with fresh eyes where possible. The other tip is to read out loud. Now, I'm not a neurocognitive expert, so I'm not a brain scientist, but and I'm interested in the brain, and I have read a few things, and also from educational kind of pedagogical theories, this is something that is effective. When you read out loud, your brain processes information in a much richer sense. That means neurocognitively, you're connecting a lot of kind of areas and parts of your brain rather than just reading passively and keeping this in your mind. So you're activating a lot more areas in your brain when you read out loud, and you then process the information better. And when you do that with your writing, you're obviously giving yourself the chance to be a bit sharper and be a bit more switched on to find the things that you can change, be it errors or even expressions that you need to change or punctuation that you need to change. So reading out loud, that means verbalizing and actually, if you can, speaking in a normal voice so that you're reading and hearing the mistakes as well as reading them and following along. That can increase your chances. If someone does this, and if you have your own experiences, please let me know. When I do this, when I edit, I often do this as well, because for me, being a bit, also of an audio learner and processing of information type of person, this does help me. So I actually use this strategy when I proofread. Another thing that is also kind of related to the brain, and here I don't want to go too far into this brain stuff because I don't want to say anything wrong, but from what I've read and from what the kind of theories in my area show, when you read what you've written from the end to the beginning, you're changing the way that your mind wants to process information, because the mind at the end of the day is something that processes information from beginning to end. And that, of course, I understand perhaps in other languages, it might be from right to left or from left to right. So what the example that I'm giving is when you're reading, for example, in English, you're reading from left to right. I understand that maybe in Arabic, things might follow a different pattern. And I just actually was reminded of this now. But when I say read from the end to the beginning, read from the end to the beginning in whatever kind of direction your language that you're writing in takes. So for me, the example is from left to right. So if I read from left to right normally, when I edit, I would then try to read some text from right to left, or at least from the end of the document to the beginning of the document. This doesn't mean that I'm reading things backwards so that the words don't make sense. What I mean here is that I'm not going from the first section to the next section to the next section. I'll start with the last section and read that. Or I might even approach this from a word by word kind of process. And that can mean reading the words without really understanding what the sentence is. It's a bit strange, but the idea behind this is that when you do this, you're focused on the detail naturally because you are disrupting the automatic reading process that you are taking. And why this helps is because when you disrupt that process, you are eliminating any bias that your brain naturally fills in. Because when you read, you try to make sense of information, and your brain will sometimes, in this process, the automatic kind of reading process, fill in the spaces or the gaps or the errors that might be present, because your brain is anticipating this and filling it so that you have the correct meaning. And of course, you're the writer, so you are better aware of the meaning than people who aren't the writers. Now, that's wherein the issue lies. People who are not you, who didn't write what you did, they will not be able to fill in the gaps. And so by reading from the end to the beginning, you are giving yourself the chance to read as if you are not the writer. And that's helpful. That can help you find those mistakes. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but that was the best way I could explain it. This next one is a bit easier to explain, but it's still very effective. This strategy is to make a list of frequent errors from previous feedback. And I think I mentioned that earlier. What this looks like is and sometimes writing this list can be helpful. You will write a list of all of the feedback that you've received on your writing. And then you can overlay or you can use those lessons and look at your own writing. And for example, that might include in the past, you might have received a lot of feedback from your lecturers or teachers that you are missing some words. Or it might be that you often misspell certain words. And that can be quite helpful because those are the errors that you can then focus on. And when you focus on them and look at your own writing and look for only those errors, chances are, because your mind is more focused on a single type of error, that you're likely to find them, rather than if you were looking at your writing and looking at all of the possible errors that you could make. So essentially, making that list is helpful because it also allows you to go one mistake at a time and focus on that one mistake and look at your whole writing. It is a bit time consuming, and obviously you need to have time for this, but if you do this, the chances are that you will identify those errors with greater accuracy and frequency because you're focused on that one error. And then once you've done that one error, you can go to the next one and continue that process. I'll just check the chat. Fantastic. Thanks, Jude. So Jude, that is great to get your input too. Thank you. Before I go on, actually, because Sajid had that kind of input, does anyone else have any really helpful strategies to share? I'd be happy to hear that too, especially if something works really well for you. I think that would be great to share. Thank you, Sajid, for getting the ball rolling there. And if not, got something. Peer editing, taking a rest before doing that, useful to come out with very valuable results. Thanks, Shahid. Fantastic. Peer editing is always, a great kind of way to edit and work with someone else, get that input, and to also develop your ability to edit. It's great to hear. Thanks, Shahid. Shahid, sorry. And taking a rest. No, I think that is very, very useful. Taking a rest. In this modern world, also over here in Australia, sleep is often overlooked as something that is maybe not as important because the modern world has so many important things that we need to look out for. Oftentimes sleep is somehow relegated to less important, but it is something that we all need, and it is almost like a superpower because of the amazing regenerative qualities it has for us physically and also mentally. So yeah, that is very valuable. Thanks, Shahid. I guess the final strategy that we have that I'm mentioning today is to use tools. And that's just a reminder because these tools are ever present and sometimes we overlook them. So when you're proofreading, do try to use these tools. Don't obviously 100% rely on them, but use them and know that they're there. So the spell check on Microsoft Word is present, and it can help you find some of those errors that you might make that you didn't catch. Because as I said, sometimes when we are reading our work, we automatically fill in some of the errors or miss them because what we're looking for is the meaning, and we're trying to always make meaning of something as best we can. And so we might miss things that the spell check, the spelling and grammar check on Microsoft Word, and I think the equivalent on Mac can help us find. What you can also do there is use the tool like find and replace. just to make sure that if you have a number of errors that are the same, that you can check them and change them all quite effectively. The spell check. Oh yeah, I mean, Shahid, the AI checker tools, that is something that I I don't know much about, but I know is there, and it's a fantastic technology, obviously, but it's also good to use a wide variety of things because sometimes I've also kind of experienced that AI is not always correct. So it's good to use AI, use Microsoft Word, but also do the check yourself. That's very important. Um, but yeah, thanks for sharing. For grammar, AI checker, yeah. What we're seeing here in Australia, in especially at our university too, students are using AI, and it can be helpful, but sometimes it can make the writing worse. So actually, I think some people use it, but their own writing is better. So make sure that you still, develop your writing skills and check your work yourself because it's valuable to have that human check as well, so that we don't give all of our academic skills to the robots and to the AI. That's good, but it's good to use as a tool. I agree. If you get the chance and if it's allowed, that's another thing that I think is a good message to share. Always check how you can use AI. And if it's allowed, then of course, by all means, use it and learn how to use it to help you. But if it's not allowed, then also make sure that you stay on the right side there because there is software and there are penalties for using AI if it is not allowed. So for me, the most important message I can share is to check if you can use it first. Yeah, also here, it's usually not allowed, but it is becoming more common. And sometimes we support different academics in different schools like education, nursing, orthodontics, dentistry, business, and the whole variety of degrees available here. And some lecturers, they are allowing it and some are not. So it's interesting to see it's developing very quickly. So the best advice I can share in this very, dynamic and changing landscape is check with your lecturer and check for that assignment. Can you use AI or not? But yeah, that's an interesting thing to keep a lookout. Shahid says they prefer to check the error by peer editing. That's a good one. Or reading what they've written from beginning to the end. That's it. Nice one. Thanks for sharing. It's great to have that input. Thank you so much. So these are some strategies that we have. Common errors. Now, after the strategies, um, we're looking at some common errors. I was just checking, Yahya, if you wanted to share some ideas or even just like say something, feel free to. I'm very happy to get that kind of two-way interaction in this workshop. Common
Thank you
errors.
for your amazing presentation. Really, it is very interesting and beneficial for the students. Really, I'd like to tell you that Dr. Ahmed is connected from the internet. Anyways, he'll be back soon. In case of writing, the more editing and revising, the less errors. But the problem is when we teach students the writing skills, all the errors should be checked and correct. Or there are minor and major errors. So in the very beginning, when we teach students writing, we concern about fluency first and accuracy later. Please, may you clarify if the teacher in advanced level, how can they manage with the students if there are some errors?
Thanks, yeah. That's a great question. I hope I've got it right. And I do agree with you. Fluency and getting a message across in the right way is definitely the priority. The presentation here is kind of on that next stage that once you have a fairly clear main point and you're sharing your message for the most part in terms of the language and the structure of the content. Once you've got that clear, then this presentation is about that kind of final checking that you can do. And it's certainly very important to focus on both elements. Obviously, the first part is much more important because that's the main thing. And so this second part is a bit is a bit less important in terms of the two, but it's still important because it adds to your credibility and your, I guess, the quality of your writing. And at university, sometimes that can mean in terms of the real outcomes, you might get more points if your writing is more accurate and precise. And you also develop your writing skills as an academic writer by focusing on this kind of fine-tuning of your message. And that can sometimes make the difference in terms of the marks that you get and also the clarity of your message. So once you've got kind of the main part of your message that you're sharing and that's clear, this second part helps you ensure that you're even clearer and that you can provide the nuance and the smaller kind of detail that can sometimes also make some important distinctions, and can also support the clarity of your message in the same way or in a similar way that the focus on the more major aspects of the message can be. And so I think it's helpful. Thank you for making that distinction. Yahya?
Thank you, Manuel, for your gain. But there is another question, please. For you mentioned AI is maybe it will be a negative effect on the learners' writing skills. So what I noticed during giving examination, some of the students go to the AI directly without thinking about how they write their own writing, and they use their own skills and thoughts. How can we, for example, as teachers, control and students control the using or misusing the AI? Thank you.
This is a great question too. Yeah, thank you. And it's one that today, in our own work, in my own work, and in my own kind of professional life, we've been asking. So we had a meeting today about just that, because AI is there. It's ubiquitous. It's ever present almost in the academic setting, and students are using it. And on our side, we had this meeting to think about what can we do. First of all, we're saying what things do we need to think about as teachers so that we can ensure that students are not missing important opportunities to learn. Because you're right, AI can do a lot of things. We don't know if it does it well or not. I have seen some AI that is very good, but I've also seen AI make some very big mistakes or small mistakes. So it really, it's still a bit of a unclear situation. But what we do know is that if students always use AI or often kind of rely on this, they are missing some important skills. And these skills, I think, are important to have in the future. Of course, we also talked about the idea that in a lot of professional settings, in workplaces, people can also use AI. So there could be, you're right, this risk that students think AI is going to be used in my workplace. I don't have to learn how to, proofread my work because AI can do it all. That could be a risk. And I'm not sure myself how to build the case that to have the skills is important and helpful to do in the face of AI having the skills and being able to do it. So for me too, it's and for me and for my colleagues, it is a very important question to keep thinking about, because I think that will be something that can ensure that we're still able to do the teaching that we do. I'm not sure if I said that in the best way, but it's a great question, and I think we are thinking about that question here too, and how to
Thank you.
how we can ensure that message is still shared with the students as well. In a way, having the skills yourself is probably why people are undertaking education. And so we must, I think, just persist. And that was the outcome of our message of our meeting today. because there are so many uncertainties, we just need to persist with sharing the message that these skills are paramount to critical thinking, to being an effective teacher, and to being a helpful kind of member of society too. Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, yeah. In the next few slides, and feel free to ask any questions too. I'll try to interact as best I can. In the next few slides, we have common errors. And these common errors are ones that I think some researchers have found are fairly common at university. And so that's why we've included them here. They're common mistakes students make at university. And so it's good to be aware of these in particular. Homophones, apostrophes, missing words, sentence fragments, run-on sentences, and comma splices. We'll talk about what each of these mean, but feel free to ask a question anytime. Welcome back, Professor Nunina. I think Yahya let me know that you logged off, but you're back now. I hope
Thank you,
everything is
man.
okay.
Oh, thank you. My apologies.
Not a problem. Here we're looking at common errors that are homophones. They are words that sound the same, but they are not the same, as we can see here. And these include things like to, and to. The first one is a preposition. The second one is a word that adds emphasis or makes something more extreme. And the second one is the number two. And the examples below that, there, and there, and whether have similar kinds of aspects. They all sound the same, but they are, as you can see, very different words. And sometimes in our minds, we might mix this up, especially when we're writing. And when we're writing an assessment or an essay, our mind is on integrating the research. Our mind is on developing our argument and sharing the message. It might not necessarily be on that clear distinction between words that sound the same. And so one of these, that's why it's first, one of the things to check when you're checking your writing for proofreading is to check that homophones haven't been an error that you've included in your writing. Spell check won't pick this up. And so this is where your human kind of critical proofreading is still required. Apostrophes are another very common error. An apostrophe is that punctuation mark that is like a comma, but is in the air. So it's like a air comma. And an apostrophe, when it's used, it can indicate that something is a plural noun or a possession or a contraction. I'll just quickly clarify that. In this example below, institutions is plural. That means it's more than one institution. Here, the example is many institutions support democracy. Here, we don't have an apostrophe, but sometimes there is an apostrophe when you are referring to the plural. So a good thing to note is if you are talking about, or if you'd like to refer to a plural noun, check that you haven't used an unnecessary apostrophe. On the same note, the next example below, institutions, this indicates possession. That means that something belongs to the noun that is being referred to. In this case, the institution's policy is clear. That means the policy, the word following institution, relates to the word institution, and it belongs to or relates to institution. Here, the apostrophe is used correctly to indicate possession. Apostrophes can also sometimes be used to make contractions. And a contraction is just two words joined together, and in the middle is the apostrophe to show that connection. Here, it's valuable to take notes. And it's here means it is, and sometimes it's can also mean the contraction it has. So that's kind of confusing. It does require you to check the following sentence, whether or not the it's is the it is or it has. It can also relate to possession. The library is closed. Its hours are 9 to 5. And here, it's relates to the pronoun. Let me just check that before I do it. This was my example. Another common error that we have are missing words. When a single word is omitted from a phrase or a sentence, this can happen anytime. It happens to me quite a lot. When you're typing or even when you're writing, your mind might be quite quick quick and thinking about one idea and the next idea and so on. And sometimes you might just miss a word. And so when you're proofreading, and especially if you know from your previous feedback that missing words are a thing you need to check for, then make sure to check for this, because it can have a big impact on the clarity of your message, clarity of your sentences, if you're missing a word, because the reader, like I said before, isn't in your brain, and they haven't done the research you've done, and they aren't, as knowledgeable as you are because you're writing it. So they might be really affected if there's a word missing. So check for that, if you know that especially it's a type of error that you make a lot, missing words. The example that we have here is there are many types of that you need to proofread for. It looks okay, but there's obviously something very important missing. The word error is missing between the word types and of, just here. Sorry, between the word of and that. Similar to this, there's something missing, is the common error called a sentence fragment. Now this might require a bit of grammatical knowledge. I'm not sure if your knowledge is perhaps better than the ones here. Grammar is not a very big focus of language sometimes here in Australia, because it's assumed that it is inherent, but it is not always inherent. And so it's possible that you might have better insight in this than our students here. A sentence fragment is basically a small part broken off from something bigger. Like we can have a fragment from a stone or a rock. It's a smaller part of the stone. In a sentence fragment, it's an incomplete sentence because it's a small part and it comes from a more complete or bigger part. A sentence fragment can be both missing a subject, or it can be a missing verb. For example, here are two sentence fragments. The first one, try to improve their writing skills. Here, again, it doesn't look too bad, but there is something missing. What is missing is we've got the verb tried. Tried is the past tense of the word try. But we actually don't know what tried to improve their writing skills or who. And so in this example, when we read it out, we're left wondering, who is trying to improve their writing skills or who tried. And so in this sentence, the subject is missing. So a sentence fragment can be a missing subject, like in this example, the first one. In the second example, the students to improve their writing skills, we know the subject, we know who it is. But if we read it, we'll probably find that the main verb is missing. Of course, because we have that example above, we can substitute that and we can see it's the verb tried. So this is an example of both a missing subject, the first one, or a missing verb, second one. And they're both quite common errors to make, again, because when we are writing, we might not be focusing on 100% writing precise grammar. We're thinking about the broad idea so that we can share our content on our main message. And so it's just a reminder to check for sentence fragments, which are a missing subject or missing verb. A sentence fragment can also have a dependent marker. And so another type of error, another type of sentence fragment, is not just a missing subject or a verb. It can also be missing a whole kind of clause. What that means, a clause is a simple sentence. So a sentence fragment can be an error where the missing part is a whole sentence to connect it. Yes, thanks, Ruba. That is exactly right. So when we're thinking about sentence fragments, we are dealing with more complex sentences. Exactly. And you've got the word there, which is perfect, compound complex. So these types of sentences are when you try to connect ideas and you use more than one clause. And just to quickly bring everyone up to speed to the same level, a clause is a subject and a verb. The smallest or the simplest kind of sentence is a subject and a verb, a simple sentence. But when we connect very simple sentences together using things like and or like for, or like however, then the sentence becomes complex. And so when we deal with complex sentences, we can sometimes create sentence fragments, which are like the ones below. And excellent, thanks for that point, Ruba. For an example, when he went home, or the second example, because the experiment failed. Both of these are examples of sentence fragments. The reason why they're fragments is because when we read it, we know that the idea is not complete. It doesn't sound complete. When he went home, when we read that, we can be left questioning what happened when he went home. Or when we read the bottom one, because the experiment failed, we might ask ourselves a question, what happened because the experiment failed? So when you experience or when you read your writing and you come across sentences that sound like this, that leave you asking questions, then you know that you probably have a sentence fragment. You're missing something. To correct sentence fragments, you could say, when he went home, he had a nap. In this case, you complete the idea and you also lift the error, or you correct the error. Here, when he went home, we had that initial question, what happened when he went home? He had a nap. And I think I just connected that because sleep is so important. You might have even seen that YouTube where it says sleep is our superpower. And I think that is very true. Sleep just has these amazing qualities. You know, there are even some places that I haven't seen myself, but I have heard about and read about where professional, workplaces in one of their floors, like, I don't know, like maybe in the basement or even like upper floors, they have little pods, like little pods where you can sleep in. Um, and that's in an office, professional offices. So professional offices, they have a whole floor dedicated to sleep where people can have a nap. And obviously, I don't think they sleep there the whole day, but the idea is that sleep is so critical that even naps, power naps, they're called, can have such an impact on productivity and an impact on, I guess, on your mind and your ability to be productive, that they have these kinds of things. And that's why I kind of included this having a nap, just to kind of remind us all how valuable sleep is. But that was a bit of a digression, sorry. So the next one, because the experiment failed, to correct this sentence fragment, we said they had to find a new source of funding. Now we understand what happened as a result of the experiment failing. Both ways are ways to improve a sentence fragment by adding a complete clause that helps us have a complete idea. Now, just briefly, if you wanted to share your thoughts about how we can correct these fragments. We'll start with number one, scientists to Antarctica to study seals. So it could be missing subject, missing verb. In this case, scientists to Antarctica to study seals. Sounds okay, but on closer inspection, there's something missing. And give it a few seconds, but if not, I will just kind of go to. Nice. Thanks, Shahid. Excellent. Scientists go to Antarctica to study seals. I think Antarctica must be really, really cold. We're happy to fill out the survey. We're happy to fill out the survey, sorry. And here missing subject, that's it. So simple ways to correct fragments. Sometimes you add a subject, sometimes you add a verb. And it is a frequent error, so make sure that you just check your writing because it's oftentimes a simple fix, but it can have a big impact on the cohesion and the coherence of your writing, which means it's a better experience for your reader. And if your reader is your lecturer mocking your work, then giving them a good and precise reading experience is going to work in your favor, more likely than not. Nice one. Weird. Thanks, Ruba. Great. So yeah, if you were to add that apostrophe, that would be another way to fix that. Excellent. That one I didn't think of, but it is accurate, and it's a way that we can do it. So excellent. Thanks, Ruba. Nice. And here we just had that kind of answer. So to fix a fragment, add the missing verb or subject, or add an entire sentence. Now, another sentence, or sorry, another error type that we can make is run-on sentences. And these are sentences that are joined together, let's say two clauses, subject and a verb, that are joined together, but there's no proper punctuation. That means some kind of punctuation mark is missing. An example here, in 1967, the US Congress passed civil rights laws that remedied problems of registration and voting. This had political consequence throughout the South. So it's obviously a long sentence, but not only is it long, it has some clauses, that means subjects and verbs, main subjects and main verbs, and it is missing that really important punctuation. When you read things out loud, sometimes you can catch the run-on sentences too, because it's a long time before you can take a breath. The idea is that when you reach a full stop or punctuation point, you can take that breath when you're reading out loud. And in this case, it's probably easier to catch because it is so long. The way that we can fix this run-on sentence is between the word voting and this, we can add a full stop and we can add a capital T. So we essentially fix the run-on sentence by creating two separate sentences. What we can also do is, instead of creating two separate sentences, is we can add the appropriate punctuation. And in this case, we would add a comma after voting and before this, and we add the word and. And in doing this, what we are doing is we are creating a compound sentence. So Ruba, you mentioned compound complex. This is another type of sentence that's a bit easier actually, and it's called compound, which means you're connecting two independent sentences with a comma and an appropriate coordinating conjunction. Sometimes they're easier to remember because they are for and nor, but, or, yet, and so. The mnemonic fanboys can be a good way to remember these. So using a fanboy and a comma can be a way to correct a run-on sentence. Very similar to the run-on sentence is a comma splice. This type of sentence is when you have a run-on sentence with only a comma between. And so it's very similar, but what you need to do to correct a comma splice is to add a missing fanboy. And remember, fanboy was a coordinating conjunction, which means that if you use this, instead of having a very long sentence that is a run-on or a comma splice, you are creating a compound sentence because you have the and the fanboy, otherwise known as a coordinating conjunction. Here we've kind of fixed this with no comma, full stop. Oops. And a comma and the and as well. So same way. Now, if we put this into practice, if you include information from others in your writing, this is a type of error. How can we correct it? Share your ideas, everyone.
We can add quotation mark.
So we're done. I missed that. Sorry, what?
We can share the resources, like put some mark and the resource at the end of the paper or at the end of the book if we are writing a book.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Ruba. That's the great way to fix it. There's no like one answer, and that's definitely something we can do. Excellent. So references, nice one. Thank you. How about this one? The imports from India over the last 2 years. So have a think. What kind of error is it, and how could we fix it? Oh, sorry, I didn't check the chat. Yes. Thank you so much. That's it. So we can use rose or there's no verb. Excellent, Sujud. Thank you. So to fix this, we can add something like those. Or Ruba, go for it. I saw your hand up, sorry, just now.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same. Like the imports of from India over the last 2 years were high or low, or we can inform something about it.
Exactly. Thanks. So you can add, as you said, Ruba, excellent an object. Or you could add those missing words. So nice one. Here, the one that I had was the imports from India rose, but equally, you can say the imports from India over the last 2 years were higher as well. So you can add that at the end. So excellent. Thanks, Ruba. And thanks everyone for also the responses in the chat. Here's the last one, just briefly. Responded favorably to the recommended treatment. Ruba, go for it. Thank you.
I think we can add instruction, like should be sent to the blah blah blah, or we should like put instruction after it because it sounds like a command or something like that.
That's true. It could be a command. I'll just draw your attention to the responded. So it's a past tense. So it's a good idea. If we look at the ed at the end, responded favorably to the recommended treatment, do you notice something about the message? So it's talking about the past. Any other ideas? But it's definitely good to be adding that additional information because you're right, there is something missing, and that's good. So Jude, go for it.
Maybe there is like a subject and verb missing. Like for example, they were responded favorably to the recommended treatment.
Excellent, thank you. That's a good fix. So some kind of subject, so we know who responded favorably. In this case, responded is a main verb of the sentence if we have that missing subject. So excellent. Thanks, Sujud. Great. And thanks everyone for your interaction. So these were obviously just some brief exercises to kind of just get us thinking about the value and thinking of how to proofread. There's a proofreading checklist here. I know we're getting close to the hour, so I don't know. I don't want to keep you over time, but here is a checklist of some questions you can ask yourself when you're proofreading. Because when you see this list of things, it'll get you into that kind of mindset and you can recall some of the lessons that we had today. Actually didn't have a poll, but if you had any questions, I'd be really happy to answer the questions. And it's been really great having you interact. I personally haven't ever taught overseas for a while, so it was really an honor. And not just that, again, to just repeat the message, I've heard about you from our colleagues here in Australia when we were watching their presentation about academic skills work. And when I heard about, the way that you view education and obviously the struggles that you're going through, and then this opportunity, I was really, really quite happy to join this because it's a once in a lifetime experience for me. And I wish you all much strength and solidarity. If you want to keep in touch and even ask questions about academic skills or ask questions about writing, there's always a friend over here in Australia. And I know that a lot of my colleagues also feel the same way. It's just I think the timing was a bit strange. Colleagues sometimes have other things that they do, but for me it's such an honor, and I can speak, I think, for a lot of other colleagues. They would be here too if they could. Thank you everyone for this
so much,
opportunity.
Manuel, for your wonderful presentation. Really, I do appreciate that on behalf of Dr. Ahmed, because he is disconnected. So thank you so much. And any students who are here can ask any question, please. If you don't have, all thankful and grateful to you, Manuel.
That's a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank
you
you
very much.
Bye-bye.
Ruba, go for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this session. It's very helpful. I have a question regarding the writing process, not just the errors, but rather the process of writing. Is that okay to ask?
Please do. I hope I can answer it as best I can. Go for it.
Okay, so basically, when I write something, for example, if it's a story, I'm kind of person who likes to imagine the general idea of that story and start drafting part by part, not just to have like a whole ready draft and then draft it again and again, like the common way. So, do you think this, like the writing process has its right or wrong way, or like is it's okay to do it this way, like drafting part by part. Like I make sure that this is what I wanted to write. Yeah, this is exactly it, and then feel like it's safe to move on to the next part of the story. And of course, after finishing the whole of it, the whole story, I look at it in general.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting to hear that you're writing a story. I think first of all, I would share that with the skills that you have in a more creative writing, like stories, that's something that I honestly I can't speak to with much authority, even though I wish I could. I think it's a fantastic skill to have. But there's that important distinction to make between academic writing and creative writing. They take sometimes very different skill sets and very different, abilities. So that can be something that is just good to note. But from a general kind of proofreading perspective, I also wanted to share that there is no right and wrong way to proofread. What I've shared today are just some strategies that you can apply if they work for you. And that's the key point. It's got to work for you. Um, there are sometimes more, I guess, tried and true or more best practice kind of processes, and they include, following a process that is efficient, that allows you to, effectively identify errors using a variety of different ways. And there's also no linear process. So yes, definitely, maybe I missed that message. You can go backwards and forwards in the proofreading process. You might, plan some ideas, do some research, and then proofread that. And you can say this section is now done. I'm going to go on to the next section and then write research and then edit that as you go. Sometimes a very valuable way to check whether or not your particular method or process works for you is by reflecting and reviewing and taking stock of what worked and what didn't work. And in that way, you keep developing through an iterative process a way forward for you that is based on your feedback, your preferences, and your style. And thereby you're kind of improving your own method. So that can sometimes be quite valuable. But like I said, creative writing might take very different approach. I'm not an expert in creative writing, even though, I think it's great what you're doing, and I wish you all the best for that. It sounds like it would be interesting. And if you want to share, what are you kind of working on at the moment?
Yeah, thank you so much. That really answers my question. And it's okay, actually. I'm working on a project, storytelling with the British Council program, Resilient Voices. So I was writing and drafting my story, and my way is a little bit weird because whenever I ask someone, they tell me like, no, it's just we write it as a whole draft and then we start bit by bit. But for me, I started the other way around, so it sounded a little bit awkward to them. And I felt like maybe I'm doing it wrong, even though I wrote other stories before the same way I write it, and it found a good celebration from others.
Great. I'm glad that it helped. And I hope that story goes well. I hope to be able to read it somewhere if it is possible. It sounds like a very topical kind of a topic. And I'm just reminded by looking at the picture there in the top, the icon there, top left of your professor's picture there, reconnect, and the message about education being so valuable. Thank you for sharing, Ruba.
Is there any question, please, students?
I might have a question for you if there's none. What's on the books for you today? What are you looking at today in terms of the curriculum, or what are you doing today? If you can share, if you'd like to share.
If I can come in, if you don't mind. Thank you, Manuel. I really feel unfortunate to have encountered this internet connectivity issue. But I will make sure to revisit the recording and watch the session. But my sincere apologies. On behalf of the students, I would really like to thank you so much for your effort. But I'm sure Dr. Yahya stepped in, and thank you so much, Dr. Yahya, for stepping in and supporting the session. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, we just started the term 2 days ago, and students are, I suppose, are preparing for the semester, new semester. It is virtually, it is wholly online semester, unfortunately. We hope to go back to in-person teaching sometime soon, but so far it is virtual teaching. So I'm sure most of our students are preparing for the new semester, hopefully. Yeah, as you can imagine, Manuel, those students are stories of determination and stories of resilience through hard times. And Ruba is one example of those who keeps documenting and writing and sharing her poetry and writing with the word. I'm not sure if you had shared something, Ruba, already, but I'm sure.
Not yet, but if you'd like to, I would love to share.
I mean, yeah. If you're happy to share something, I mean, would love to hear.
Me too. Or sometimes even if sharing now might be a bit tough in front of an international audience, I'm quite happy to, if you let me know where the link or something, I'm happy to read it later too. But yeah, it's so inspiring, you know. And here, I hear and I watch the news and you hear about these things and the things you're going through, and it's just so inspiring what you all are doing. You know, I can't believe that I'm a little part of this, which is to me very, very special. And yeah, it's a really great opportunity. And I, you know, wish obviously things were different. Wish I could do more, but yeah. I do wish
Thank you,
you all the
Manuel.
best.
We really appreciate what you've done, and we feel that any act of solidarity is really heroic in this time. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. What you've done is already great and highly valued, and I'm sure the students share the feeling with me in that regard, that we really appreciate every single minute you dedicated for the session in terms of planning, preparation, and delivering the session, and also the willingness that you showed from the beginning, that you wanted to support our students. Yes, Prabha, please feel free to share.
Okay, so this poem is part of a series that I write, a series of poems. I wrote them at the very beginning. I started writing them after a couple of months of the war, where things got a little bit complicated, and I found nothing to do but to write these letters to a friend who doesn't know the meaning of war. It's a book project that I write and I document things here in war, not just about what the people hear about the news and destroy and bombardment, but rather also about the layers that the war has shaped our lives. So I use these letters to document these things, and this is one of these letters. A letter to a friend who doesn't know the meaning of war. Letter 2. My friend, I write to you from a city that breathes beneath the rubble, where the air carries the taste of gunpowder. The silence hums with the threat of an explosion not yet born. Do you know how childhood grows old here? How dreams shrink into a crust of bread, and a crust of bread. How hope becomes a roof that doesn't fall before dawn. I write to you not to be pitied, but to leave a trace, a witness that I was here, that I tried to love life, even as it bared its teeth. Here we are denied even the luxury of tears. To cry might be taken for weakness before the soldier, or worse, before our children. My friend, tell the world that in war, not only the fallen die, the ones who survive carry their death inside them, walking forward on legs that tremble beneath the weight of body-trapped memory from a city that burns every evening, that rises again through stories. I sent you this letter, hoping that when you read it, you will pause, if only for a breath, before defining victory the way they taught you to. Your friend, still trying to survive without forgetting her name. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ruba.
Yeah, I'm also speechless. I'm trying not to be too emotional, but yeah, that is a fantastic piece of writing. Thank you for sharing that, Ruba.
Thank you so much.
That
And by
very,
the
very
way I say friend, it doesn't mean like a specific friend. I write the word friend for the whole world. I treat the world as a friend. It's like when I needed like someone to talk to send letters to, at those moments when I felt like I want to share these things, but the way I want to share it. So I try to capture these things by treating the whole world as a close friend to me.
I got that too. So it's definitely very, very inspiring, very powerful. Would you be able to share that with, I would be really happy to share that with us here. I think that's an important message, and it strikes you right at the heart. So if you wanted to share that, if you're ready, whenever it's ready, and if you want to, we'd be very happy to have it here. I'd like to share that on to pass on your message, because it is so powerful. I better stop now before I start crying, because this is on the recording. I don't think that is very very great, but it does move me very much, and that's all I can really say at the moment. Oh, wow.
Thank you, Ruba.
It's been a great honor, everyone.
Thank you, Manuel. Any questions, guys? Any comments? Any suggestions? Any remarks before we wrap up and thank Manuel for the session? Either you can unmute and ask.
Got some there. Thanks, fantastic world. Thanks, Ruben. Thanks, John. Thanks, Hayat. And
Thank you.
anyone else that might have missed. But I think for me also, it's open. And I've done this, I've been a teacher for about 20 years now. And I do this in some situations where I make myself available. Feel free to send me an email for any questions that you might have that are related to academic skills, that you want an Australian perspective on. I'm very happy to share that as well.
Appreciation and respect.
So you have a friend in Australia at La Trobe University Library, that you can also reach out to. I'm really happy to hear from you, and also on a more personal level, I'm very happy to communicate. And Ruba, if at any point you are ready to share that is, this is a life moment, I think, hearing that poem from you. So thank you.
I actually shared I shared part of them on the platform Substack. Part of them, not all of them. And I'm thinking to make like the project as a book. in the future.
I'll definitely keep my eye out for that. That sounds like a book to get, because wow, that was amazing. All the best for that. I think you have a great talent, and that's a fantastic poem that is life-changing. Thanks, everyone. Feel
Thank
free
you.
to ask any questions too. I know that sometimes when you're on the spot, and that's why I also said you can reach out to me. Sometimes when you're put on the spot, it's hard to think of questions. Me especially, I'm like that. When someone says any questions, then my mind goes blank, and I'm like, oh, what did I what do I want to ask? So that's why I also share my message too, because I know what it's like to sometimes get that blank mind.
Thank you so much, Manuel.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hope you have a great rest of the day. Great start to the beginning of your studies, and all the best from Melbourne, Australia.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Dr. Janina, is it okay if I log off?
Yeah,
Or-
Dr. Janina
Go
is
ahead.
not here, so I think he lost his connection again.
Perfect. Please give him my best. I might just wait just briefly. Do you think he'll be back sometime soon, or is it quite difficult to get that consistent? I mean, I can imagine it might be quite difficult to get the consistent connection.
I believe maybe as long as we keep the recording, it's gonna be safe to say that he might be able to come back to the meeting. And may not, it's
Okay.
not really, it's a matter of his own connection, his own area, so.
Thanks. But just quickly then, um, what was the name? Was there their name, Ruba, to what you read of that particular poem?
Letters to a friend who doesn't know the meaning of war.
Thank you. Got it. I'll look that
Thank
up.
you so
So
much,
it's like,
Manuel.
thank you so
Take
much,
care.
Yahya.
Take care.
I better leave now. Wish you all the best and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate
Bye,
it.
everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.